This is Lego Steve and this is a Lego Creeper, and today I'm going to be building 6 mechs based on different Minecraft characters and making some giant mobs to join each of their armies. I bought this set to start things off, which is the first Minecraft set ever made. It's a fun set and it comes with tiny versions of Steve and a Creeper. These little guys won't have much of a fighting chance against bigger enemies, so let's start by building a mech for Steve. Since he is so tiny, I used 2 hinge plates to create the seated area for Steve and built up the back area with some clips and made an attachment point for the legs under the seat. I clipped on the arms and the legs and added some shoulder cannons to give a ranged weapon option. I added some thrusters to the back and gave the mech 2 diamond swords so it can be even more dangerous than a regular size Steve. This is a pretty simple little mech, but I love the unique stance that it has, and now Steve has a much better chance of winning a battle. I need to include a regular Steve and Alex minifigure in the army, but these figures are pretty cheap, so I ended up grabbing a couple of extras to increase the numbers. Diamond armored Steve is leading the squad, but I also have a bunch more figures and they don't have any weapons. Bamboo is sponsoring this video and they sent me this 3D printer, so I decided this would be the perfect time to put it to work. Instead of running to Bricklink and getting a bunch of these swords for 70 cents a piece, I headed over to Maker World and I found this file. I ran a quick test print and the sword looks great, so I lined up 24 more swords, got them printed, and armed every Steve and Alex in my army with their own sword for just 54 cents. I added the Micro Steve mech from earlier into the army and things are looking good so far. Let's get started on the Creeper army. The Micro Creeper from earlier needs a mech too, so I asked my friend Sans to come up with a design since he's working on building a micro Minecraft world. This mech uses the legs from a brick-built creeper and has a flat spot right in the middle where we'll be mounting a cannon. Sans built this mech to include a rotating launcher for micro TNT blocks, and the Micro Creeper fits perfectly in the gunner position. I love how this looks, and the functional TNT launcher is a great inclusion. Make sure you check out Sans' video after this one to see all his other builds. Creepers come in 21 different sets, which makes them a pretty common minifigure. I managed to get a hold of 29 of them, which adds a whole lot of explosive power to this army. The Steve army is at a pretty big disadvantage when it comes to explosive power, so I found this TNT block design on Maker World and I got the print started to level the playing field a little bit. This only took a couple hours to print. It swapped colors automatically to make the black section in the middle, and once I printed all the white pieces on a separate run, I was ready to get everything assembled. With just a little bit of glue and a couple minutes of assembly, I have an awesome looking oversized TNT block for the Steve army to use to their advantage in battle. I've been super impressed with all the things this printer can do. Just for fun, I also printed this Minecraft fidget cube, which automatically swapped colors during the print thanks to the automatic material system, and it required 0 assembly. There are so many models available to print for free from Maker World, like this Technic style fidget spinner. This was one of my first prints, and as soon as I pulled it off of the printer, it just worked. The A1 combo is honestly the perfect way to get into 3D printing if you're new to it like I am. Bamboo is running their biggest sale of the year between now and December 3rd, where you can save tons of money. Check the link down below to head over to their early Black Friday page. Moving back to the Steve army, I want to build a mech for the regular Steve minifigure. I built a pretty tall cockpit for this mech and carried the round shape all the way down through the waist. Steve can stand up inside, and I used a rounded windshield to close things off. I built the legs in purple and attached both legs to the waist. For the arms, I used a fixed joint for the elbow and added a hand before mounting it to the shoulder. I connected the other arm and built some shoulder armor to offer some extra protection. I built a turret with a couple of different gun barrels on it, and I mounted it to the top of the mech to add some firepower to the weapon system. I built a large diamond sword with plates and tiles, got it attached to the wrist, and this mech is done. I actually really like the way this turned out. It's different from any of the mechs I've built in the past, and I think the sword scales really well with the mech, which is nice since I had no idea how I was going to make that happen going into this build. Since we built a mech for Steve, I think it's only right that Alex gets one as well. I decided to use sand green for this mech. I added a light and antenna to the top for communications and put a stickered tile on the back for some more detail. I kept the arm skinny toward the top and built a larger section for the forearm with an oversized hand. I connected both arms and moved on to the legs. I used the same approach as I did with the arms, keeping the limbs smaller closer to the body and making them bigger the further away that they are. I connected the legs to the torso, added Alex to the cockpit, and used a droid torso as a safety bar to keep the pilot in place. I added some hose pieces with handles for Alex to control the mech and finished things off by giving her a weapon. This was a different direction than I usually go with my mechs, but I like it a lot. The open cockpit design gives a different feel to things, and I'm happy that I had enough sand green to make this work. Let's add this mech to the army and keep moving forward. I picked up this set which just came out a couple of weeks ago, and it's got some really fun stuff included. The way these are built translates really well from Minecraft into Lego. I'll add the pig, fox, cat, and llama into Steve's army, since I think they'll fit in well there. The zombie can be added into the creeper army, and I also picked up some minifigure zombies to add to the numbers along with a baby zombie. I'm going to set this creeper off to the side since I think he'll come in handy in just a minute here. I want to build a mech for this creeper, but while I do that, I thought it would be fun to try and 3D print a giant creeper because the creeper army is starting to seem a little underpowered compared to the Steve army. I made this thing so big that it's going to take almost 11 hours to print, so I've got plenty of time to work on my creeper mech while that runs in the background. To start the mech off, I built the torso section and created a hatch for the front of the cockpit so the creeper can get in and out easily. I added on some hips and popped over to the printer real quick to add some magnets into the connection points before hitting resume. I built the arms with some fixed joint pieces and added some shoulder armor with a rounded dome piece. I connected the hand, got another arm attached, and moved on to the legs. I kept the design pretty simple and added on some shin pad armor before moving on to the foot. I rounded things off with some slopes and greebling and got both legs attached to the hips. The print is coming along super well, and it's crazy to see just how big this is going to be once it's all finished. I built some shoulder cannons for this mech because I feel like it would make sense for a creeper mech to have lots of firepower. I stole the head off the creeper from the birthday celebration set and clipped it onto the torso. I pulled 2 of these bionicle blasters from my parts collection, got them attached to the hands, and this mech is finished. While it might look a little ridiculous, I think this is a fun design, and I'm glad I went with a dual-wielded weapon option because it seems like this mech is ready to do some serious damage. After adding the mech to the army, I headed back to the 3D printer to grab my completed giant creeper. I had to glue on a few extra pieces that I printed separately to save on plastic, but that only took a few minutes and the final model is finished. This thing is absolutely massive compared to a regular minifigure, and it was so easy to make considering that all I had to do was scale it to 200% and hit print. It adds a huge presence to the creeper army, and the Steve army is going to have to come up with something pretty impressive to beat this. Back in 2020, LEGO released this Minecraft set that came with a Kai skin, and this gives me the perfect excuse to transport a Ninjago mech into the Minecraft universe. I grabbed this set earlier this year, and I've been waiting to put it together until now. This mech is huge. It's got 4 arms, and the whole thing can hang from the hook attached to this string, which is pretty neat. I added Kai to Steve's army, but unfortunately for these guys, I also bought the Ender Dragon set, which comes with one of the strongest enemies in the game. The Ender Dragon went together pretty easily. It has a lot of solid joints that can be moved around well for different poses. I think this is definitely the best looking Ender Dragon LEGO has made. The ship that comes with the set is pretty good for its scale, and it even has an interior which is nice for playability. Altogether, a really nice set that I enjoyed building. It has something for each army as well, but I think you could definitely argue that the Creeper army gets the better end of the deal here. The same can't be said for this next set though, because I also bought the Iron Golem Fortress. This is such a great looking set, and it comes with a lot of stuff that felt pretty worthwhile since I picked it up for 20% off. The best part about it is that these 2 side towers come off and you can pull the top half of the fortress from the base and use them as legs. I love how well thought out this function is, and it makes it my favorite Minecraft set I've ever built for sure. You get a bunch of different minifigures with the set too, so I was able to add forces to both sides of the army once again, and I think things are really starting to fill out here, but we're not done yet. If you've been around on this earth for a while, I'm sure you've had somebody who's asked you this question. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 horse-sized duck? We all know the answer is 100 duck-sized horses. A horse-sized duck would be terrifying. But running with this logic, I decided that an Ender Dragon-sized chicken would probably be pretty terrifying to go up against, so I decided to print one. This print only took a few hours, and with a little bit of glue and some dry time, the giant chicken has become a reality. This chicken is an absolute unit, and I think it gives the Steve army a pretty big upper hand. To add a little bit more to the Creeper army, I bought the Devourer Showdown. The best thing about this build is that you get projectiles. It can launch and spit projectiles at enemies, which adds some much needed ranged capabilities. The set comes with a nice variety of figures, and the friendly skeleton reminded me that I actually picked up a couple regular skeletons a while ago that I should probably add to the army as well. 3 of them didn't have any weapons, so I printed some crossbows for them to add even more ranged attack power to the army. Which one of these armies do you think would win if they had to go up against each other? I think the only way one of these armies would easily win against the other is if they had this guy on their team. But until LEGO makes him into a minifigure, they're out of luck. Don't forget to check out Stan's tiny Minecraft world and let me know what other mechs you want to see built on the channel in the future.